Pete Blackburn from What Chaos. It's a podcast, but it's a YouTube show. You can subscribe to it and watch as he and his boys love the game of hockey, and it's a great show, and I appreciate Pete Blackburn's time on the Adam Gold Show. I'm not trying to rub it in. I said this to you over Twitter because they kicked our rear ends now for the second time in 3 years. What is it like watching Marchand win a cup with Florida?
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, bittersweet feelings. Obviously, like you think about it once he gets traded halfway through the year, and you think about what it'll feel like and what it'll look like if he gets it done with Florida. And like at the end of the day, as a Bruins fan, I'm happy for Brad Marchand. I think most Bruins fans are. Like I want his personal success. Do I wish that it was with the Bruins first? Of course. Do I wish that it was with anybody but Florida? Maybe. With the way that kind of the past few seasons have gone with the Panthers and how they've kind of, ruined the Bruins' lives now for about 3 straight seasons, that element of it is tough to swallow, tough to stomach, especially considering now Brad Marchand has won as many Stanley Cups with the Florida Panthers as he has with the Bruins, and he's only been there for a few months, and that kind of sucks.
So look, I am not trying to be that guy, but was it worse because Marchand was so great in the series? It's not like he was just an also-ran, just like playing out the string. I mean, he could have easily been the Conn Smythe winner.
Yeah, no, I get that element of it, and it is weird that he's not only like a member of the Florida Panthers, but he was one of their best players and one of the biggest reasons why they won the Cup. He could have easily been the Conn Smythe winner as a result of it. But at the end of the day, like, if he's gone, I'm still going to root for him. I'm still going to wish the best for him, especially, like, he may have just earned himself about $10 million more with his performance in the postseason, because he's probably going to get an extra year if he wants that 4th year in free agency, and he's upped his AAV to probably around $8 million, $8.5, when he probably would have had to accept $7 had he.
We lose him? Oh, there, you're. I think you're right. By the way, he's going to get a big contract. Pete Blackburn is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. No chance he returns to Boston in free agency, correct?
I would say non-zero chance, but very, very low. I mean, they don't want to pay him the money that he's going to command, especially now. And I don't know why he would want to come back here if it weren't for the money. What does he have to gain by coming back to Boston, especially given the circumstances and the state of the team right now? They're not in a win now window.
So what if he signs with Toronto?
You'll never hear from me again is probably the easiest response there. It'll be the toughest thing that I've had to deal with in terms of fan perspective. No, I don't think that he ends up in Toronto. I've been saying this for like the past week or so. An off-the-board selection that I think people should give consideration to is Marchand to Utah. I think it makes a lot of sense. From a money perspective, they've got a lot of money. They need a veteran presence. They want to push closer towards being a playoff team. And once they get to the playoffs, they want to make noise. And like I said, you might have a Conn Smythe caliber player added in free agency. And on top of that, his best friend, Kevin Miller, who he played with in Boston and who he runs a company with, is stationed in Salt Lake City and in Utah, and he's a big outdoorsy kind of guy. I think that is a destination that would make a lot of sense for Brad Marchand.
I am advocating for the Carolina Hurricanes to back up a truck for Brad Marchand to play here. How would that fly in Boston?
I've been thinking I think it would fly in Boston. Like at this point, the Carolina Hurricanes rank below the Florida Panthers in terms of like the enemies list.
Right.
So I think there's only a few places where he could go that would elevate himself from like what is already uncomfortable. And you mentioned one of them, the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think the Montreal Canadiens would also be on that list. And that's probably the end of the list there. Carolina, though, I think about Sam Bennett for them more than I think about Brad Marchand, but for some of the same reasons. It's, for Sam Bennett, I think he allows them to improve down the middle.
Yeah.
He brings an element of nastiness. He brings an element of making them a much tougher team and much more physical and, again, nasty team to play against in the playoffs. And I think that those are the things that they need to address this offseason.
You think Sam Bennett is going to play anywhere but Florida next year?
I think that it's more likely than not that he ends up staying in Florida.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm not going to say that there's no chance. Like, if he hits the open market, especially this summer as a center, like, the center market is pretty bleak this summer.
Yeah.
And a guy like Sam Bennett, his value has never been higher. So, like, if I'm Bennett, I'm at least testing the market to see what I could get before committing to Florida again.
Oh, if he goes to the market, I think it's very likely going to be 8 figures. I think he'll make $10 million on the open market, but I don't see him leaving Florida. He may still go back to Florida, but I think he'll make less there because they need to sign him and Ekblad. But I'll tell you what, the Hurricanes could afford Bennett and Brad Marchand in free agency with about $28.5 million and not a whole lot of players to sign. If that was Carolina's free agency, I think people down here would be absolutely losing their minds. Pete Blackburn is joining us. What Chaos, the podcast. You can watch it on YouTube. What do you think if you're Edmonton? I know one of the guys in the show is a big Oilers fan. What do you think about having McDavid and Draisaitl and getting further away from Florida than you were the year before?
Yeah, it's got to be frustrating, but I also think that, part of the reason that they're further away from Florida is because Florida is so much better. Like, Florida this year, objectively better than they were last year.
Yeah.
And I think that we thought the same thing about Edmonton, and sure, it may not have looked that way in the Cup final towards the end, but, I still think Edmonton was a little better throughout the course of the first 3 rounds, and they just ran into I still think that Edmonton is the second best team in the NHL. But Florida was in a class of their own, and I do think that this is one of the more dominant Cup-winning teams that we've seen in decades from these Florida Panthers. So, if I'm Edmonton, I try not to, say, well, we're so far away from these guys, because so is everybody else. And you still got to Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final. I don't think that there needs to be a blow-up of any sort in Edmonton. They're definitely going to need to rearrange their roster. That's just kind of the financials of it all. But I wouldn't hang my head if I were the Oilers.
No, look, not having Zach Hyman also mattered, I think, to Edmonton. I think you're right. I did a podcast last night, and I try to impress upon people that, while Carolina isn't Florida, nobody else is, and nobody's really close. I think Florida is historically a great team. Pete Blackburn, last couple of things real quick. Do you get the sense that Boston is going to go have some sort of a fire sale, or Elias Lindholm? Is he available in the right deal? I would assume they're keeping Pasternak and McAvoy, but what do you make of what Boston is going forward?
Yeah, so I would say that you're kind of on the right track there. There's probably one hard untouchable, and it's David Pasternak. I would say that Charlie McAvoy is a soft untouchable, where, if you get a deal and it looks unbelievable to you and Charlie McAvoy's involved, then maybe. But I think that pretty much everybody is being put out there, or everybody can be listened on outside of that. Right now, this is a summer of transition. They're going to have to restructure their team, and whether that means just bringing in outside players, whether that means trades, whether that means getting creative, I think that you're going to see a much different Boston Bruins team next year than what you see on paper right now. What that looks like, I think, is anybody's guess at this point, because there's a lot of flexibility in terms of financials. What there isn't flexibility, what you're kind of lacking in terms of flexibility is, if you want to make a big splash on the trade market, what does your package look like? Because they don't have a ton of assets, whether it's players in the system or whether it's draft capital. So that, to me, is going to be the biggest question.
All right. Well, the Hurricanes have a whole bunch of prospects and a whole bunch of draft picks. So hopefully we can take all of Boston's good players. Pete Blackburn, What Chaos Show, wherever you get your podcast, also live on YouTube. I appreciate your time, man. Have a great summer. We'll check in.
You too. Thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
You got it. Pete Blackburn here on the Adam Gold Show.